Okay, welcome back. This is session one, part three, and we're talking about prompt engineering. On my screen, I am sharing with you Dan Fitzpatrick's AI classroom book and also an infographic or acronym of how he approached prompt engineering. Dan Fitzpatrick was actually one of the first people on the scene who started playing around with AI for the classroom and saying, hey, we need to kind of have a specific structure when we're using AI or Gen AI in the classroom here. So, in the beginning, he created the acronym PrEP, and this whole thing over here on the left goes with the 80-20 rule, right? So the 80% part is the prep part where your AI chatbot is creating the content. And then down here, this acronym edit is the 20% part where the teacher or educator is fact checking and making sure that content is accurate. So Dan actually figured out that the more we use AI or chatbots, you know, we actually have to be more specific in our prompts. So he expanded his acronym prep to prepare to include things like the tone, the emotion. So there's a lot of existing acronyms out there for prompt engineering to help you remember, how to prompt the chatbot. But I'm only sharing Dan's because his is, he's one of the first people out there who came up with this. I do realize that this is a lot to remember, especially for beginners. So I actually have two other acronyms that I prefer. So this one is by Mary Howard. She's a nationally certified science teacher, and she wrote this book called The ChatGPT Guide for Educators. It's a quick read on Kindle, and it actually does a really good job explaining ChatGPT and how she's using it in the classroom. So she came up with the acronym PTT, where P stands for perspective, T stands for task, and T stands for topic. So when you were watching me prompt the chatbots in the previous video to compare the different chatbots in the table, I was actually just using the second T here, which is giving it a task. I gave it a task to create a comparison table on these four chatbots. But really, to really get the wish that we want, to really have it create that product that we have envisioned in our heads and come out the way we want it to, we have to become a little bit more nuanced, more specific, and clear in our instructions. So, this is where the other parts come in, giving it perspective and identifying the topic. PTT, it's okay. I prefer to use my own acronym, and that is RDT, where you tell the chatbot its role, you give it some context, you give it some details so that it can make a better product for you, and then give it a concrete task. So this is actually the acronym that I will be using with you in our practice session in the next few minutes. So RDT. I'm going to toggle out of my window here, and I am going to jump into ChatGPT, which is my choice of chatbot. Like I said, feel free to use the one that you're more comfortable with and just follow along with me. I'm also going to use the free version here for ChatGPT 3.5, because not everyone's going to pay for a plus version. I realize that. So I'm going to stick with the free version in case you do decide to use ChatGPT along with me. All right, so we are using RDT, which is role, context details, and task. And honestly, the some people think that it's they should try to stay away from these lengthy prompts, but I happen to think that the longer your prompt is, the better your product is, or the better your return is. So I actually just typed this out a few minutes ago. So here's my RDT. So you are an eighth grade science teacher. That is my role that I'm telling the chatbot to take on. Actually, let me just read the whole thing first. You're an eighth grade science teacher preparing your students for the New York State computer based science test this May or this spring. Your students are reviewing the required lab investigation on weather and climate. Create a list of tasks or create a list of practice test questions for review. So, RDT, R for role, you are telling the chatbot, or I'm telling the chatbot to take on the role of an eighth grade science teacher. My context details are the students are prepping for the New York State CBT and they're reviewing the lab investigation, and the topic is weather and climate. And I'm giving it the task to create a practice list of test questions for review. Let's go ahead and input that and see what the return is. All right. So that was really quick. It gave me a list of 12 review questions. So now let's go back and ask it to create an answer key. Actually, let's see. I actually want this to be multiple choice questions. So let's do reformat these questions into multiple choice questions. Write a answer key after the list of questions. Let's see if that works. Ah, so now it's one upping me because not only is it doing the same thing I've asked it to do, but now it's doing two different versions at the same time. So it's asking me, hey, which one do you prefer? This will help make CGPT a lot better. So let's take a look. Response ones, here's multiple choice. What is the difference between weather and climate? One, and then it's giving me four answer options. What is the difference between weather and climate? All right, I don't really see a difference here. Let's take a look all the way at the bottom. Gotcha. Okay. Okay, so I see a difference in the questions. If I don't see the 12th question here, so I'm going to stick with this one, and that's what I'll keep. So I do like that. I like that it gives me different drafts and then I could pick the one that I like the most. So here I've changed the questions into multiple choice questions and it also has a separate answer key for me to copy later on. All right, so I could stop right here. I'm good to go, right? But that's not enough. So I want you to take note here, 1026. Okay. So how long does it take me to create all of my materials with ChatGPT? So we've created about 10 to 12 different multiple choice questions and we have an answer key. Let's go and take on that second um, point. So we automated our content creation here. Now let's move on to differentiation. So this is going to be my middle set for my middle group there. So let's see if we could differentiate this for our struggling learners. Okay, so simplify the language, simplify the sentences, and reduce the answer options for struggling learners. So here I'm thinking about my students with the IEPs, those who might need no extra time, those who just might need a little bit more scaffolding, right? So notice the difference between the first set, and here it is differentiated for my struggling learners. So what's the difference between weather and climate? And it reduced the options from 4 to 2, whether short term, climate is long term, or they're the same. Perfect. It didn't, I forgot to ask it for an answer key after, yeah, answer key. Let's see if that does that. There you go. And I forgot to point out that I don't have to keep doing the RDT acronym each time because I'm in the same thread or I'm in the same conversation. So I don't have to keep reminding GPT here to say, hey, remember, you're that teacher, you're working with this group, we're working on this topic. It remembers all of that from my previous conversations in this window. So now we've got a set for our struggling learners and we've got a set for our middle group there. Let's go ahead and differentiate it for our advanced learners, right? So notice that I'm down here in my conversation in my thread and it's talking about that. So now I'm going to have to prompt it to go back and use the same set of original questions and differentiate it for our advanced learners. Bring it back to four answer options. And okay. And so what I typically do with my learners, my advanced learners, is that they tend to be more of the independent students when it comes to review. And so one of the things I also like to include is to have ChatGPT include the answer explanations because those are one of the things that they like to do. You know, they say, "Hey, how come I got this wrong? And could you explain this to me?" You know, so rather than me having to go to five different students and have to explain it, I'm going to have ChatGPT automate that process for me as well. Include answer explanations. So let's see what it does. Okay. So if this was something that I would put into a Google form, I would actually create this one for my advanced learners where, you know, they have the review questions and then I would use the setting in the Google form to include that feedback and that's where I would put in the answer explanation. So that way, you know, they're not, maybe I'm in the corner of the room and I'm doing a smaller conference or smaller group intervention with my struggling learners and they're more they can go ahead and get the answer explanations on their own rather than having to raise their hand and wait for me finish with the other group. So it's 10:30 now. In 4 minutes, I now have a set of three materials. I've got a set of multiple choice questions for my struggling learners, and I've got a set of multiple choice questions for my middle group or regular students, and then a set of questions differentiated for my advanced learners as well. Let's go in and add a little bit more. Let's see. Let's create a short response question using the claim. Oops, let's take that out the way there for you. Claim evidence response format. Let me just start there and see what it does. Okay, so now they have so they have multiple choice review questions, and then I'm also having them practice CER responses. Okay, and then they put it into here. So what I would do is I would just give them the claim here. They probably might have a reading. Oh, you know what? Let's have that. Create the reading passage to go with the CER. There you go. So now I have not only my multiple choice questions, but I also have a reading passage and a CER short response activity to go with it. Let's go ahead and differentiate that as well. Let's see. Um, level the reading passage for for struggling learners. Okay, so now I'm scaffolding my reading passage so that it's a little easier for my struggling learners. It's still the same information, but now it's something that they can use. So I will give them this, and then I'll also give them the claim prompt, and then they will be writing the evidence and the response component. So actually, what I want to do is take the CER prompt and reformat it into a graphic organizer for students. Not quite what I wanted there. It doesn't really know what I meant by graphic organizer. So I am going to take this prompt and rechange it into a table format. Okay, so this is what I mean that you have to go back and forth, right? So I have something in my head and it takes a little while for me to articulate it. I know I wanted to have a table graphic organizer for my students. I don't necessarily want them to have the evidence and the response filled out. So let's see how I can reward that. Create a table for the CER response. CER prompt. Keep the claim, but make the evidence and response sections blank for students to fill in. Include a sentence, 2 to 3 sentence starters as support. Let's see if that does it. Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. So here it is. It's got some placeholders. So all I have to do is just realistically just copy or cut out the information in these rows, and then I could provide or just replace it with a sentence starter, one of these sentence starters. So that's okay. All right, let me go back and let's go to uh, level the reading passage for advanced learners. So notice that I can keep going back and forth as the idea strikes me. And that's okay because we're still in the same thread. And even though that my reading passage was several prompts away, it still knew what to do because I'm still within the same thread. So it's 10:35 in 5 minutes. I've just added leveled reading passages, a beginning of my graphic organizer for a CER prompt with some sentence starters. Let's do provide not exemplar and non-exemplar responses, student responses for the CER. So then I would also have some examples to share with students when we go over our writing response about what a great response looks like and what a not so great response looks like. And let's finish it up with a rubric. Create a yeah, create a 4-point rubric for the CER. Oh, and here it goes. Sometimes I forget. I prefer to have it in table, so just tell it reformat that rubric into, let's move that out the way, into a table. Okay. All right. So here's the rubric that I would use for my CER responses. Uh-huh. Not like not quite what I want there. Is giving me a 4-point rubric, 1 point, 2 points. Let's reformat that. So this is where I gotta double check. Let's see. Rewrite the rubric so the total points are 4. Hmm. Okay, I could do with that. Give it a point for each of the part, and that's okay too because this CR stuff, CR responses tend to be short anyway, so I could do with that. All right, so now let's see if I can get those multiple choice questions. Let's do a game review. So I would like to use it for Kahoot. So I would say take the original questions, original multiple choice questions, and put it into a table. Column 1 should be the uh, question. 2 columns should be wrong answers. Actually, let's make that 3 because there's usually 4 answers, right? 3 columns should be wrong answers, and one column should be the correct answer. And I'm formatting it this way because I know that that's how Kahoot styles it, right? So rather than me having to go to Kahoot and create a new game and type in each individual question and then the answers, I'd rather just have CGPT create the table for me. I could copy and paste it into a spreadsheet and then upload or import that spreadsheet into Kahoot and be done. So let's see if it works. It does. Yay. So 10:39, less than a half hour here. We've now created at least 2 or 3 days worth of learning materials for a review on weather and climate with my 8th grade students. I've created review questions with answer keys. I've differentiated for my um, struggling learners and for my advanced learners. I created leveled reading passages for a short constructed response. I've turned it into a table graphic organizer for CER, provided exemplar and non-exemplars, and then also created a spreadsheet or will be creating a spreadsheet to import into Kahoot for a game review. So that is the magic of using Gen AI to automate your content creation, to differentiate, to personalize that content for your students. And then even app smashing it. We're getting a little bit creative here and using AI to app smash with Kahoot. All right. So I'd like for you to think about how you can use the chatbot. Think about what you are doing in the classroom. What are some things that normally take you a lot of time, and you could really use some help with a virtual assistant or a virtual teaching assistant? What are some things that AI can do for you and give you more time back so that you can be more present in the classroom with your students. All right. If you need more help, let me know. You've got my email, you've got my booking calendar, and we can brainstorm and we can work on more of this with you. But that wraps up session 1, part 3, effective engineering, or rather, effective prompt engineering. Happy practicing!